Hello my friends, welcome to another week of Inside Star Citizen. We only got a few more episodes left for the quarter, and this one's going to be about 4.0. They were actually supposed to be doing this I think once a month since September. Haven't really kept up with that so much. Big surprise. I just want to go into this one, because I already can see the comments. Road to 4.0, 3 years, 4 years, 8 years, whatever it is. There's obviously going to be Pyro specific stuff in here. I'd keep an eye out for the stuff that won't be specific to Pyro, that might be applied to other places, the gameplay features that we're looking at. That's the stuff to get excited about here. Otherwise, it's all like a year away, right? I mean, I hope. All right.
At CitizenCon 2952,
check this out.
We introduced a new initiative called Journey to 4.0, showcasing stories about development specifically for 4.x branch of release. From new mission types like investigations to flight experience changes such as the master modes, from life in the verse-altering resource management systems to anything and everything Pyro related. The Journey to 4.0 is our chance to step outside the traditional weekly update cadence and look farther ahead than usual. And knowing Star Citizen, this journey will probably be one filled with plenty of twists and turns along the way. And the initiative itself will extend beyond this year's CitizenCon to become a semi-regular series of stories and showcases as you're about to see today. Now, most folks are familiar with the process of concept art, that act of creating expression to discover that which you want to add to your project, as well as determining that which you most definitely do not. It's perhaps the most exploratory and experimental part of any development process, and it extends beyond just the visual. Now, today's Journey to 4.0 presentation is from Senior Sound Designer Matt Gabney, a discussion of the process of creating audio concepts for environmental reverb on the distant alien worlds of Pyro.
That should be fun. This actually, there's some lore about this already out, about the sounds that you get in some of the caves and some of the, on one of the parts.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Gabney. I'm a senior audio designer at Cloud Imperium Games, and today I'm here to talk about reverberation, ambient sound design, and a few concepts we are experimenting with for Pyro planets. Without extensive soundproofing, most spaces will produce many closely spaced reflections, which reach the listener shortly after the initial dry sound. We hear this series of reflections as a single continuous sound, which we call reverb. Reverb is created when a sound occurs in space with pressurized atmosphere, sending sound waves out in all directions. These waves reflect our surfaces in space, decaying in amplitude until reflections eventually die off. It's my own hypothesis that the experience of sound is about 30% of the human experience and possibly up to 50% of the game experience. Different reverberations give us a rough idea of the space we have around us.
Sounds like there's
During
more
a phone
walls
call,
around
for
you
example, where we can't see the other person we're talking to, it's still easy to get a rough idea of the physical space they're in. The reverberation does that. Oh, hi, Mom. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. We're filming. I'm gonna call you back. Thanks.
He's going in depth, huh?
So that's where I put it. Hey, Mom. No, I'm sorry. We're still filming. I can't
Listen to
talk
those
right now. I'll call you
acoustics.
back.
Oh my gosh,
okay?
what is that, a meeting room?
Thank you.
Imagine that.
Bye.
Ooh, Settlers of Catan.
Checkmate. Here's one reverb for it, for example, and here's how the other would sound. In video game development or in audio production in general, getting the right feel for space is absolutely crucial for the immersion of the audience. As audio designers, our task...
I want to hear in the comments what you guys think of the sound in the game. I think there are some sound effects in this game that do a really good job. But I expect a lot more out of the immersion I get from sound. I think caves were kind of like a good attempt at building a lot of different noises. And like they kind of get it with the ships, but at times, you know, you hear sounds through walls and stuff like that, and it breaks the immersion. What do you guys think, though? How does the system work in your opinion so far?
task is often to recreate an effect that closely matches the visuals. In reality, Often the best sound design work is what doesn't get in the way of interpreting the scenario. So our work is unnoticed until there's an issue with what you're hearing.
Seems like a fun job.
Basically, there's two schools of thought in layman's terms, analog and digital. Either there's a software generating reverb on a signal based on a complex algorithm, or you capture an area that you like the natural
Why do I feel like I'm kind of watching The Office right now?
reverberation of and use the created impulse response, or IR for short, to generate reverberation through it, which is what we did at the basement of CIG. One big advantage we had with
Now I wanna
the
see
CIG
what
parking
that is-
lot
what
is the
that's
huge
going
surface
towards
area on
in-game.
both levels, with a lot of parallel flat surfaces that can create delays, all kinds of distortions, and it's pretty much one driving element that I wanted to use for Pyro. How cool is that the new building we just moved into could be used this way for the new solar system? Of course, the IR we capture is also digital, which allows us to use them in-game. So, where would it make sense to use IR in-game? My current task as one of the new senior sound designers in the team is to get some concepts together for the new Pyro solar system we showed some videos of during the latest CitizenCon. Based on the art direction I received, Pyro is a hostile environment. Any life developing on those planets is based on very different rules than what we have on Earth, and in Stanton as a consequence.
No, I want
And the
new
basic
B-roll.
idea is to make the planet sound
They already
otherworldly,
showed us this.
unusual, a bit different, but still create something that pleases the ears of the players. It's a fairly contradictory pitch, so if you're me, after receiving such a task, you go home and cry under the shower for a bit.
I get it.
What I came up with is a list of complex systems that will allow us to generate several layers of reverberation that often doesn't exactly belong to the physical space you're in, and has a certain musical tone, plus some other granulated effects to give you sounds that could not
This is
possibly
just
come from our solar
bugging
system,
me.
making the
There we go.
familiar sound unfamiliar in subtle ways.
Okay, that's new. What is that noise? Jeez. That's intense.
This involves a lot of experimentation. So anything I can
like, is
show
the
you
moon
now
singing
is
to me?
purely so
Or
we
no,
could
that was
have
a
a
planet, huh?
clearer conversation about concepts.
So what I'm getting here is that he is, because they keep calling them the concepts, he's literally taking the videos that we used to see and just making the sounds he thinks would work for that scene. So this isn't actually being generated in game. What I can't figure out is if I'm hearing any music or if this is all supposed to be what would be hearing in game, because that's a lot of noise. We're like pretty high up in the atmosphere here, and there's like some ringing noises. I'm just wondering where that comes from. Is that music or sound effects? Now that just sounds like some alien stuff. Also, everything does look like it's shaking. What is going on in this? Does this have maybe something to do with the solar burst thing that goes on? I don't know. Almost like you're underwater. It's an interesting noise. Noise sounds a little disrespectful. It's an interesting...
It's not confirmed, validated, or even discussed at this stage. I'm just coming up with ideas on my own to have content and possible systems to talk about later when Pyro audio goes into production.
I get a really strong sense of like loneliness that they're trying to do with the sound concepts. And so far, a lot of what we've seen in Pyro has been actually quite a bit of human activity, outposts and stuff like that. I'm interested in seeing more of what they're trying to do out in the wilderness, out in these really lonely areas, to actually drive people to even be out here in these situations, rather than just like having a bunch of these empty areas that nobody's ever going to or seeing.
And so why do we use IR instead of algorithmic reverb? The reason is simple. We're generating content on a planetary scale. The basic idea is to come up with a typology of sound parameters that would essentially allow us to procedurally generate audio. But with what we are designing for a system this size, your absolute first priority is optimization, while being able to control and test for all the parameters.
So, of course, once again, this is something that they're doing to try and handle the scale. Oh, see, now that sounded pretty cool.
So the design...
I like that. But this is, again, something that they're trying to do to handle the scale of the game. As, you know, a solution that might work for a 20-kilometer piece of land might not work for multiple planets.
So the design has to be clever, and the resources are controlled. IR takes substantially less processing power than algorithmic reverb. What I often did for the concepts of Pyro is to layer several different sized IRs on top of each other. This gives you an odd feeling about the space around you, and allows me to treat the layers differently with a few parameters and a few knobs.
It's like a completely different sounding atmosphere. Wow, the geology looks amazing out there.
So that is a quick look into one aspect of sound design for Star Citizen. I hope you enjoyed.
Okay, so that was, well, Jared didn't pop up at the end there. So that was not entirely what I expected. We went over sound for the whole time. So I mentioned at the beginning, look for stuff that might be applicable to other places. Obviously, this could be, but it's already hard enough to understand how this could apply to Pyro. I don't expect anybody to be excited about this coming to Stanton. You know, sound design is a big deal, but I think something that most people aren't going to say is the most hurting part in the game. It's something they want to share about with progress to 4.0. I think they probably could have done something a little bit like better about 3.18 coming up, but this is what they decided to do the preview on. And I think I'll probably have to have a Citizen Central or something at some point, maybe even a call-in podcast episode where we just talk about how much of this stuff they're going over now, despite Pyro's original expectations, even with the delay, thinking end of this year. There's a lot of stuff that I would normally think, hey, maybe they took advantage of that extra time and kind of went back and redid things and really set up their plan to be further along. But at the same time, we're not really a year late anymore at this point, or 2 years late. We're like 6 months kind of late. Like these planets were supposed to be going into Evocati at the end of this year. So it's interesting just to think about where they are with it now. But anyways, I'll stop ranting. I'm sure that'll get plenty of comments as well. I'll see y'all next week. Keep an eye out for a video coming out on the main channel in a few days. Bye.